talk more about that and some of those challenges, Ambassador Ray joins me now from New York. Ambassador Ray, that's got a good ring to it. You must like hearing that. Good to see you. I want to start with obviously, good to see you. I want to start with obviously the change in the United States and what that might mean or how that might shape things at the United Nations. Mr. Ray, what will it mean, do you think, to have a President Biden and, you know, what could be a return to sort of the normal global order?
Well, I don't know if normal works, but I think that I think better works. I think there's going to be more engagement on the multilateral front on, for example, on the environment. I think the president-elect has been very clear about rejoining the Paris Agreement, and I think that's going to impact all of us because the Paris Agreement requires all of us to do quite a lot, and if the Americans are moving ahead, that helps us. But as Canadians, we also have to know that it means more changes are coming in order to get to the zero emissions by 2050 target. It's not very far away in terms of what we have to do. I think on things like foreign assistance, I think we're going to see more engagement on the struggle to fight COVID-19. I think we're going to see more global engagement as well as national engagement in the U.S. And I think that they're going to rejoin the WHO, for example. They've never really left, but they're going to be, taking that more seriously. So I think on a whole range of those fronts, things will be better. There's still lots of disruptive forces in the work today, sure. But having one less is a good thing.
I know you haven't been there long, but you do know the UN, and you certainly know a lot about diplomacy and politics. Have you had could you feel the lack of leadership of the United States at the UN? Is that something that you got a sense of right away, or?
I don't think for example, I have to say, and to be completely fair, Ambassador Kraft, who is known to us as Canadians because she was our American ambassador in Ottawa, has been extremely forthcoming with us on several issues and helpful, like positive in terms of, for example, on China issues, on what's happening to the Uighurs and others. The U.S. has been very active. There's some other issues, for example, we have resolutions every year that we sponsor on childhood early forced marriage, where the Americans are continuing to push back on any language that talks about sexual and reproductive rights. So, that makes it harder for our feminist agenda to move forward. Doesn't stop it because we have the support of a healthy majority. But that has been a very important aspect of policy under President Trump, and I don't think that will continue to be the case. I think President Biden will change that emphasis. That was the case before under President Obama. So I expect we'll get back to a more progressive position there.
I'm glad you brought up the Uyghurs because it is one of the subjects I wanted to touch on. I know you were tweeting a little bit yesterday. The House of Commons, there was a House of Commons committee here in Ottawa that called the China's Uyghur policy that it amounts to a genocide. The parliamentary secretary to the Justice Minister has said the same thing. And I wonder, as Canada's former special envoy to Myanmar, where you investigated a genocide there, would you be prepared to use that word in the case of the Uyghurs?
I think we need to really begin to understand what it means to do that. I mean, we can all have our opinions in saying, yes, it is, and no, it isn't a genocide. There's no question that there's aspects of what the Chinese are doing that fits into the definition of a genocide in the Genocide Convention. But that then requires you to go through a process of gathering information and of making sure that we've got the evidence that would support that kind of an allegation. We've asked the Human Rights Council High Commissioner Bachelet to carry out such an investigation. We've asked for to join with other partners in doing that. So I think that work will continue. We cannot back away from looking hard at what is going on in Xinjiang province. And the parliamentary committee is obviously working on published information. But as I've learned in my work on the Rohingya, there's a big difference between information and evidence. And what we have to do now is see how we can gather evidence in order to carry out further steps according to the Genocide Convention. It's going to take time to do that, but we can't back away from the work that's required.
But before the break, I played the clip of you speaking to your Chinese counterpart a few weeks ago. When I was talking to President Obama's former UN ambassador, Samantha Power, a couple of weeks ago, she talked about how the relationship between China and the United States has hindered all of us, and that a different president might, in fact, help us get the Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig released. What would be your thoughts on how that relationship might change? And I wonder how your words went over too with the Chinese.
With the Chinese, I'm sure like a lead balloon, but that's not what I was doing when I was doing that. I was trying to make a case in front of all of the members of the General Assembly that this practice of arbitrary detention, which the Chinese have used against us and also against a number of other countries, is frankly disgraceful. And I wanted to make it clear that it was important for them to understand that we regard their behavior as outside any normal bounds of behavior, and that's something that we are calling out. It's also important for Canadians to know that, you can do diplomacy. Some of it you can do publicly. You have to do it publicly. And some of it you have to do privately. And I know for a fact that there continue to be discussions about what more can be done, and in particular discussions with the American government, with other governments about what more we can do to try to get these two individuals released and brought home and reunited with their families. We're doing everything we can. I'm not in the middle of everything. I'm not in a position to make any announcements at all, but I just want everybody to know that this is something that occupies a great many of us a lot of our time, and it's important for people to know that it's not simply about doing what we have to do at the UN to draw attention to it, but it's also about doing the work in Beijing and in Washington and Ottawa and everywhere else just to make sure that we can get these two people released.
This is the 75th year since the creation of the UN. I know that's not news to you. We were one of the founding members. People also may not know that your father was actually a UN ambassador in Geneva and New York in the 1970s. I wonder if you've had some time to think about the role of the United Nations and whether it is, and this is the question the United Nations always gets, whether it is still relevant and what role you see for it in the world right now.
I think it's relevant. I just think it's very challenged. It's a challenging time. But if you take two or three of the big crises we're facing, COVID-19 and the economic and social impacts that COVID-19 is having, as well as the health impacts, and climate change, and the continuing challenges of maintaining peace and security in the world, those three big challenges can only be resolved through concerted joint action, global action against the pandemic, global action in favor of dealing with climate change, which is a global phenomenon. It's not just one country or another. It's extremely important that we realize how much we can only do this through acting in a concerted way. Right. And the United Nations plays its role in that. It's not a perfect institution. It's got lots of flaws. We can complain here about the Constitution of the UN, just as we have complained over the years about the Constitution of Canada. But the fact is, it's the only game in town at the moment, and it's a place where we have to be fully and deeply engaged as a country. Are you enjoying it? I love it. It's a great opportunity. It's wonderful for me. I can't express strongly enough my gratitude to the Prime Minister and to the Government of Canada for giving me this confidence and for me to be able to do this. It's a great honor, and I'm very much enjoying it.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And nice to see you, Mr. Ray. Appreciate your time very much.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you too.
That's Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Ray in New York.